1,656 years separated the creation of man from the greatest cataclysm in history. The Bible summarizes them in just a few verses that we read in minutes, as if they had not mattered. But those centuries conceal a civilization so advanced that its memory was deliberately erased. What did humanity discover at that time that forced the Creator to reset all life on Earth? The answer is not in the myths. It is buried in the sedimentary layers and in the sacred texts. What happened between Adam and Noah was not a primitive age, but the most dangerous era in history. Imagine someone condensing the entire modern era, from Edison to artificial intelligence, into 3 lines. That is exactly what Genesis did with those 1656 years of civilization. Not because nothing happened, but because what occurred was too disturbing to be detailed. The real question is not why the flood came, but what humanity was doing to provoke it. The biblical text reveals archaeological clues in the verses that usually receive the least attention. In the genealogy of Cain, hidden among names and numbers, the trace of a super-civilization emerges. Cain, cursed and expelled, does something that seems structurally impossible for a resourceless wanderer. Genesis states that he built a city and named it Enoch, in honor of his own firstborn son. A city is not a cabin. It involves urban planning, written laws, organized commerce, and a workforce. This fundamentally contradicts the image of early humans as clumsy hunters living in dark caves. The question that historians avoid is who was already living in the land of Nod when Cain arrived there. The existence of a city requires a prior population, a minimum infrastructure, and technical knowledge. However, in the following verses, the story accelerates at a speed that defies all logic. In just 7 generations, Cain's lineage had established 3 pillars of an industrial revolution. Lamech, his descendant, broke the natural order by becoming the world's first recorded polygamist. But it was his 3 sons who forever transformed the foundations of ancient human civilization. Jabal was the father of those who lived in tents, but the Hebrew text suggests something much deeper. I wasn't talking about rudimentary camps, but about modular structures with sophisticated civil engineering. He developed logistical systems that allowed large communities to move and settle with precision. His brother, Jubal, was the father of all who played the harp and the flute with total technical mastery. The original Hebrew term does not refer to simple music, but to the mastery of acoustics and resonance. In ancient civilizations, music was not entertainment. It was a technology for cognitive alteration. Jubal created the technical interface between the physical world and the spiritual dimensions that humans do not see. But the third brother, Tubal Cain, represents the most bewildering and disturbing leap of all. He is described as a master of all works in copper and iron, an absolutely advanced metallurgist. The original Hebrew word implies that it sharpened and shaped metals with industrial precision. Tubal Cain was not just a blacksmith, but an engineer who mastered alloys, temperatures, and processes. The text mentions iron alongside copper, something that challenges the chronology of conventional archaeology. According to official history, the dominance of iron should have taken thousands of years to develop. But in the line of Cain, advanced metallurgy appears in the 7th generation without rational explanation. These men did not arrive at those discoveries alone. There was an acceleration that cannot be natural. In just a few generations, they went from basic agriculture to acoustic engineering and precision metallurgy. If they achieved all that in 7 generations, It's terrifying to imagine what they accomplished in the following centuries. The Bible suggests that Cain was not alone when he founded his civilization in the mysterious land of Nod. The expression, "met his wife," implies in Hebrew a deep exchange of knowledge and understanding. It is possible that Nod was not an empty desert, but rather an already established center of forbidden knowledge. Here enters a force that changes the entire historical and spiritual landscape of that civilization. Genesis 6 records that the sons of God saw the daughters of men and took them as wives. These beings, identified as the Watchers in the Book of Enoch, descended with a deliberate purpose. They did not come to observe passively, but to inject forbidden knowledge directly into the human mind. The Book of Enoch recounts that 200 angels sealed a pact on Mount Hermon to rebel together. Their leader, Semyaza, knew that what they were planning would unleash an irreversible curse upon them all. However, they decided to share celestial secrets that humanity was not ready to receive. Azazel taught men to forge swords and armor, turning metal into instruments of war. She also taught the use of cosmetics and seduction as a strategy, altering social relationships. Other Watchers transmitted enchantments, astrology, and the reading of invisible celestial signs. Penemu taught about writing and the use of ink, which allowed for the manipulation and forgery of information. Seriel revealed the secrets of the moon and the natural cycles that govern agriculture and time. Each teacher delivered a piece of technology that seemed like progress, but in reality, it enslaved man. Humanity received weapons of destruction when it had barely learned to cultivate wheat properly. This massive transfer of knowledge caused civilization to advance centuries in a minimal amount of time. But the price of that accelerated evolution was the genetic and moral corruption of the entire human species. From the forbidden union between the Watchers and the women, creatures were born that were not entirely human. The Nephilim were beings of colossal stature and an intelligence that far surpassed that of any man. These giants began to oppress humanity, demanding resources that the earth could no longer provide. They devoured the crops and livestock of the men until no production was enough for them. Then they turned against the very people, initiating an era of unprecedented violence and cannibalism. The presence of the Nephilim confirms that human biology was being fundamentally altered. It was not just a matter of moral sin, but of an active contamination of the genetic code of creation. The legends of all ancient cultures preserve the memory of demigods and titans who dominated the earth. The Sumerians, the Greeks, and the Mayans describe beings who descended from the sky and taught advanced sciences. They are not isolated and whimsical myths, but fragments of a collective memory about the Watchers and their children. The antediluvian technology made possible constructions that we today consider impossible to explain or replicate. Megaliths weighing hundreds of tons were cut and transported with an inexplicable geometric precision. The pyramids and ziggurats were not the work of slaves with ropes, but products of advanced engineering. They likely used knowledge about acoustic resonance and sound levitation taught by angels. In addition to architecture, they mastered genetic manipulation, creating chimeras and beasts of mixed species. Ancient texts mention crossings that violated all the natural laws established by the Creator. This explains the mythological figures of beast men that appear in the art of all ancient cultures. They also developed a deep understanding of meteorology and the possible manipulation of global climate. They could predict and perhaps alter storms and cycles, passing themselves off as gods before ordinary humans. But the most dangerous thing was the opening of dimensional portals through specific and precise rituals. The Tower of Babel, built generations later, was an attempt to reclaim that technology of celestial doors. The temples functioned as machines designed to actively connect the physical world with the spiritual one. All of this was happening while violence and depravity reached levels that the text describes as unbearable. God observed that all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth, including animals and nature. The biological purity necessary for the future arrival of the Messiah was on the brink of definitive extinction. If hybridization continued without limits, there would be no being that was 100% human left on the face of the earth. Therefore, the divine intervention was not an act of arbitrary cruelty, but a genetic rescue operation. The flood became the only available way to sterilize the planet from that biological infection. Noah was chosen not only for his moral righteousness, but also because he was perfect in his generations from a genetic standpoint. His DNA had not been contaminated by the mix with the Watchers, nor corrupted by the engineering of the fallen. God decreed the end of that era and deliberately erased all traces of its most advanced technology. 150 days of pressurized water destroyed entire cities, sacred temples, and complete archives. The sedimentary layers forever buried the secrets of antediluvian metallurgy and the magic of Enoch. What survived were only silent ruins that today bewilder us with their scale and mathematical precision. Upon leaving the Ark, Noah made a decision that forever marked an absolute difference with the lineage of Cain. He did not attempt to rebuild the technological civilization that had been judged and destroyed beneath the waters. The first thing he did was build an altar to the Creator, marking a new beginning with different priorities. He understood that knowledge without a connection to the Creator inevitably leads to total self-destruction. God established the Rainbow Covenant, promising that water would never again be used for a global reset. However, he left scattered around the world fragments of history to serve as a permanent warning. The narratives about Atlantis and Lemuria could be distorted echoes of this lost antediluvian world. The Sumerian gods Anunnaki are secular descriptions of the same watchers described in the biblical text. In Egypt, the primordial time of the Neteru fully coincides with the era of the celestial masters. Each culture held a piece of the puzzle, but only the Bible provides the complete moral context. God's silence over those 1600 years is a deliberate way of protecting humanity today. If we had direct access to that lost technology, we would make exactly the same fatal mistakes. Human curiosity would lead us to open doors that we would never know how to close again afterwards. Jesus prophetically warned that the final days would be exactly like the days of Noah before the flood. This warning does not refer only to widespread evil, but to very specific historical conditions of that era. Today we see an alarming return to genetic manipulation that occupies scientific headlines daily. Artificial intelligence promises almost divine powers, just as the Watchers promised. We are actively blurring the line between the human and the synthetic, as happened with hybrid beings. The modern obsession with extraterrestrial contact directly recalls the interaction with the Watchers. We seek saviors who come from the sky with superior technology, ignoring the spiritual danger that this implies. The current weapons of mass destruction are the modern and amplified version of the teaching of Tubal Cain. The climate engineering that we are trying to develop today was already mastered and terribly misused before. We are rebuilding the Tower of Babel, but this time with digital codes, satellites, and global networks. The story of the lost years teaches that technical progress never equates to moral evolution. A society can be technologically superior and at the same time be spiritually on a demonic path. The judgment of the flood demonstrated that there are limits that humanity cannot cross without triggering consequences. The megalithic ruins stand as silent witnesses that we are not the first advanced civilization. We are a rebooted humanity, living on the bones of a world that believed itself invincible. Unofficial archaeology continues to find artifacts that do not fit into any accepted academic chronology. Complex mechanisms and global precision maps suggest a technical knowledge that was lost abruptly. The Piri-Reis map and the Antikythera mechanism are merely shadows of a science forgotten beneath the flood. God allowed these mysteries to persist, to permanently challenge our contemporary arrogance. We believe we are the pinnacle of evolution, but we might be precisely repeating the cycle of destruction. The lineage of Cain sought physical immortality through stone and forged metal, but failed. True permanence does not reside in the cities we build, but in our alignment with the Creator. The giants fell and their names were erased, while Noah, the simple and faithful man, endured. The secret of the lost years is that technology without divine ethics always functions like a deadly trap. The hybridization attempted by the Watchers aimed to block the plan for the redemption of the entire human race. By corrupting the image of God in man, they wanted to prevent the plan of salvation from being fulfilled. Therefore, the flood was simultaneously an act of spiritual warfare and a physical phenomenon of catastrophic scale. The waters purified the land of genetic abominations so that creation could receive a second chance. But the seed of rebellion survived in the deep memory and in the darkest impulses of the human heart. Nimrod attempted to revive the system of the Watchers shortly after the flood in the plain of Shinar. This demonstrates that forbidden knowledge did not completely disappear, but rather moved to the underground. Secret societies throughout history have sought to recover that lost antediluvian wisdom. Alchemy, Freemasonry, and ceremonial magic are attempts to reconnect with the science of fallen angels. The barrier between the natural and the supernatural was established for a fundamental cosmic security reason. Breaking that barrier brought chaos thousands of years ago, and could bring it again in the times we live in. The popular fascination with ancient astronauts is actually a misinterpretation of this historical event. They were not visitors from another galaxy, but dimensional beings with a dark agenda and a very defined plan. Recognizing this difference completely changes our understanding of the past and the religions of antiquity. All the mythologies of the world point to the same historical truth, albeit with different names and masks. The flood is the most universally witnessed event in the memory of all known civilizations. It is not a children's fable, but the precise record of a cataclysm that forever redefined life on Earth. The 1656 years are not lost. They are recorded in every geological layer of the planet. They remind us that the Creator's patience is immense, but it has a definitive and absolutely terrible limit. When creation ceases to fulfill its essential purpose and becomes corrupted, the Creator intervenes sovereignly. We live in a time where the echoes of that ancient era resonate with a force that cannot be ignored. DNA manipulation is once again making daily headlines in the most advanced laboratories around the modern world. Artificial intelligence promises powers that no previous generation could have even imagined before. We are at a threshold that could trigger a type of intervention we do not want to have to experience. The secrets of Enoch Lamech, and the Watchers are essential keys to decode the present and the future. History is not linear, it is cyclical, and patterns of corruption tend to repeat themselves with astonishing fidelity. The flood erased civilization, but it could not erase the human tendency to want to take the place of God. That is the deepest lesson hidden behind the genealogies and the silent numbers of Genesis. Now you know that the lost years were not a historical void, but an era of absolute splendor and terror. We are not evolving into something new. We are returning to something very old and extraordinarily dangerous. Subscribe to continue uncovering the mysteries that official history prefers to keep in eternal silence.